So obviously this incident on Qatar, a passenger was seated next to a deceased woman.
They just said to me, "Can you move over, please?" And I just said, "Yes, no problem." And then they placed the lady in the chair that I was in. For the next 3.5 to 4 hours left on the flight.
What is typically the protocol if someone is to die mid-air on a flight?
Well, basically, let's assume they're not dead and they're dying. So normally the crews are all trained in some advanced resuscitation procedures. You'll always call for a doctor or a nurse, and amazingly, invariably you do find them travelling as a passenger. Somebody has to say that stop the resuscitation, but it doesn't appear in this one that there was any attempt. When the woman collapsed in the aisle, they just said, well, she's dead. Well, I'd be wanting to see, and I've actually been through this situation, Vanessa, so I know how it happens. Yeah. But you go to a lot of measures to make sure that the person, they're not breathing, there's no pulse. Now, when that happens, the normal thing is that you've got a pretty full aircraft, as we have in most cases. You try and put them in a toilet and throw the blanket over them in a toilet and lock the door, because the person has died not in a medical environment, so there is going to be a coronial input as to the way the person died. Who knows if there was any foul play? In this case, I understand that this lady was quite large and there's not a lot of room in the aisle. They couldn't handle her because of her size, and they saw a vacant seat and they put the lady in the seat and put a blanket over. Now, that to me is not the way Qantas or any Australian carrier would handle it. You're going to find enough people there to be able to lift the person. If you can't get them into a toilet at the back of the aircraft, you'd get them in the back row, where in some cases there's an ability to put a curtain for when you're carrying a person that needs to be laid flat. You can cover them. You don't leave them in the bulk of the aircraft where everybody's got to walk around. Because I assure you, when somebody dies in an aircraft, it puts a lull all over the cabin, and not only these poor people from Melbourne, everybody's flying experience is affected, because we are all emotional. Very few of us handle death.
Yeah, I'm not a great flyer at the best of times, but when my husband turned around and said, we've got to move, I was really shocked, and we can't hold any of the airlines responsible for the poor lady's death. But surely after that, there has to be a protocol that then looks after the customers that are on board.
So basically what you want to do is get the deceased out of circulation, and ideally in a toilet where nobody's hidden, or in the back row, but certainly not in the bulk of the aircraft sitting, and you don't have passengers sitting next to them. They had plenty of spare seats. Why the Qatar crew didn't relocate the two people who were seated next to the deceased, any airline with half a bit of character or organisation would have upgraded those passengers into business class, because at one stage they were wanting to put the body in business class. Now that breaks all the rules also. You don't go and put a body in amongst your premium passengers. So I have to say, Vanessa, it won't pass the pub test. Qatar have also had other incidents that didn't pass the pub test, when the Australian women searched on the tarmac, and our federal government just went weak at the knees, did nothing about it, and it'll be in the civil courts that where the affected ladies who were intruded upon, where they will take action. And Qatar saying it was the airport authority. And you as the carrier have the ultimate responsibility for the passenger, because you got paid the money.
So ultimately, from what I'm taking from what you're saying is that this was handled very poorly.
This was handled poorly, and it appears it was handled by the cabin staff. If the captain, who is the same as a captain on a ship, they've got the ultimate responsibility, he would have known, because he would have had to radio ahead that they had a deceased person. If they'd had half an ounce of organisation, he would have been making sure that it was carried. That assumes that the Qatari captain even knows what the procedures are, and it assumes Qatar Airlines have the experience, because my experience with them had not been brilliant when I was in Europe.
They have a duty of care to their customers as well as their staff, that we should be contacted and make sure that, do you need some support, do you need some counselling? Because this has never happened to us before. I don't really know how I feel. would like to talk to somebody and to make sure I'm all right.